Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we're going to take a look at the Sun square to Neptune, and we're going to talk about 5 different karmic lessons to be very aware of when it comes to any Sun transit. The reason that we're doing it with this one is that this Sun square Neptune is effectively hosting Mars's retrograde in Leo. So when a planet like Mars is retrograding in Leo, it's the Sun in the Sun's sign. Paying attention to what the Sun is doing as the host of that Mars retrograde can be really important. That's why we're going to take a look today at some of the shadows that can come up around Sun transits or aspects from the Sun to any planet like Neptune in this case, and what to be aware of, what to watch for, what kind of karmic entanglements and traps to be aware of. And then tomorrow we'll look at this from a slightly different perspective. I think you guys will really enjoy this today. Some of these lessons come from things that I have learned and was taught also within the background of yoga philosophy and the Vedic astrological tradition when I was in India a few times, things that I heard said about karma and that are very applicable to the Sun in this case. So I think you'll enjoy this. Anyway, before we get into it, remember to like and subscribe. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Hope you're enjoying the content. It's free to subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps us grow our channel and business, also giving us the thumbs up. You can find transcripts of any of these daily talks on the website, nightlightastrology.com. A few things coming up this week that I want to take you over to. Webinar Thursday night on the 6th house. If you want to learn more about the 6th house, why this was considered a difficult house, and also what is redemptive about this house, go to the events page, click on live talks. You can register for the webinar. It's Thursday night. If you can't make it live, we'll give you the recording afterward. Also, if you're in the Minneapolis area, this Saturday evening, we have a solstice gathering at the Grapevine Collective in Minneapolis. This is an in-person event only. We're not hosting it online. But if you're in the area, come join us. RSVP so we know you're coming. It's free to join. Hope to see you there, and we can ritualize this special moment of the year. The other thing, of course, that's happening right now is we are in the midst of our annual Kickstarter campaign, where the last days of the year, we try to rally support from all of you to donate and support the channel in the year ahead and all of the good things that we do, including free content year-round. As of the time that I am recording this, we still need 1,455 backers, and we have just about 15 days to go. We have just a little over 2 weeks and a long way to go. Thank you so much to the over 500 people who have donated to support the channel already. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Any and every donation amount really does help us. We have a long way to go, and right now we're over 100 backers behind last year's pace. And we got to 1,936 backers. We're just trying to match or beat that goal every year from what we did the previous year. We know that then we'll land in the range that we need financially as well. That support is part of how I support myself and my family. Of course, we have a staff of 11 people, including a full-time social media manager who helps me distribute, edit, post the transcripts, manage the whole dissemination of this content year-round. And we also have all of our services have affordable options. We have an affordable reading service. We have need-based tuition for all of our classes, and an infrastructure that is designed to make sure that anyone of any background financially can study something sacred. So if you value those things, it really goes a long way when people pitch in $5, $10, $15. And then, of course, there are a variety of rewards available when you support the channel. I'll be going over those at the end of today's talk. We have 50% up to 75% off all of our courses. We have a first-year course in ancient astrology that begins in June and November every year, a second-year course, a third-year course, and horary astrology course. That's 4 years worth of content for you to study with us. We have a masterclass series, a monthly moon circle, all sorts of really great ways that you can participate in our community and study astrology at a deeper level. All of those things are on sale through the Kickstarter. This is our best sale of the year on all those programs when you donate and support the channel. So thank you so much again to everyone who's already donated. You can find the link to the Kickstarter in the description of this video, pinned to the top of the comment section, or on the website, nightlightastrology.com. Again, thank you. Please help us make this big last final push over the next 2 weeks to reach our goal. We really do appreciate all of the support. I like to say something every day about what I think makes this channel valuable and why you might consider supporting it. Today, the only thing I want to say is that if you get horoscopes here regularly, like we do probably several times a month, I'll do horoscopes on particular transits. We have a monthly horoscope overview with Dana and Alex. If you come here regularly for good horoscopes, for part of how you take in information about your week to come, your month to come, whatever the case may be, and you also appreciate that I use my platform to help build the success of other astrologers. We bring in other astrologers who are talented and promising, try to give them a platform to develop their name and work and career. So if you appreciate that we use our platform that way, and you appreciate getting horoscopes from us throughout the month, please consider supporting. All right, on that note, we will now turn our attention to the Sun square Neptune. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. We're looking at the Sun square to Neptune today, and we're going to be looking at it from the standpoint of some of the major spiritual lessons that often accompany Sun Neptune dynamics. Now, this could also be applicable for those people who may have a Neptune transit to your natal sun. Any of these thoughts and ideas today would accompany transiting Neptune to your natal sun as well. The premise behind the list that we're going to look at today of kind of the 5 karmic rules that everybody should know relative to the Sun Neptune really have to do with some of the shadow sides of Sun Neptune. There are many things that are very beautiful and lovely and uplifting about this combination of planets. And we may even explore some of those in tomorrow's episode as the transit is still coming through. But I want to look at some of the shadows of the Sun Neptune and some of the karmic entanglements that often accompany this transit, which I've seen obviously in my natal practice over many years, and is also something that will be stirred up sometimes by these transits. So something we can watch for this week. All right, anyway, let me put the real-time clock up and let's take a look at the aspect first, just kind of remind ourselves of the timeline. So here you can see the Sun in Sagittarius moving within a degree today, Tuesday, December 17th, into the square with Neptune. Now, if I move this ahead just one day, we'll see that it's tomorrow that the two perfect the square. And then if we give it just a couple more days beyond that, Friday into Saturday, the Sun will ingress into Capricorn and the square is complete. So you could say this is something that's coming through today, tomorrow, into Thursday, probably as the narrowest and most acute range of the symbolic expressions, but certainly maybe even take it into Friday. So a transit that is not very long lasting. It's not the world's biggest transit. It may be subtle depending on where this lands in your natal chart. You know, we'll see how loud it gets. But let's talk now about, there's 5 karmic rules that everyone should know relative to the Sun and Neptune. And I've done stuff like this before where I've talked about some of the things that I learned when I was part of the Bhakti Yoga tradition and some of the teachings about karma. There's a lot of really solid practical advice about how to avoid creating bad karma for yourself within the vast field that can be broadly called karma yoga. Now, karma yoga is so much of it, karma yoga really has to do with our actions in the world and our actions being part of what purifies us, spiritually speaking. Now, you may not buy into any of the yogic paradigm whatsoever, so you could always take this today as just thoughts from a tradition that are interesting. You don't necessarily have to be a card-carrying member of, a Hindu or yogic tradition to take something of value from these teachings. I find them very interesting. Of course, I've been deeply influenced by the history of yoga philosophy, some of the scriptures from the Bhakti Yoga tradition. So they're a part of my life and part of my belief system. But again, as I've said in other videos, like, you take this and you do what makes sense for you with it. Now, the reason that I think these karmic pieces of advice from within the history of karma yoga, yogic philosophy, are important is because they all have to do with traps of the ego. And if there's one major shadow side to the Sun Neptune, it has to do when the ego thinks of itself as greater or bigger or more grandiose than it really is. I mean, one of the first things we can say about the Sun Neptune is the potential for delusions of grandeur exist. And the reason for this is that the Sun can be very heroic, and the Sun can fill us with a sense of purpose and pride and importance and specialness that is not unreal, right? I mean, each of us are as unique as a snowflake. Each of us are an utterly beautiful, infinitely unique creation. So the Sun Neptune can be a transit that comes along and fills us with that sense that our life is meant for a dharmic purpose, that there is something of essential spiritual value in who we are, and that it is being called to express itself in the world, that we are called to imaginative, romantic, spiritual purposes in life, all Sun Neptune dynamics that are just lovely. So forgive me, we're not getting into all of that part of it today, because the shadow, sometimes we look at the shadow of these aspects to, unpack some things that are worth exploring. And we'll maybe take it from a different angle another time. One of the shadows, again, would be that the Sun Neptune has to do with lessons that all exist around pride, around ego, around vanity, around grandiosity, around, getting too big for our britches, that kind of thing. It's a real part of Sun Neptune that we can get inflated. Inflation or delusions and a kind of egotistical mania that is often present. As soon as the Sun and Neptune are even within 6-7 degrees of one another, you'll start to feel this kind of amplifying. I find it really interesting that the Sun is the ruler of Mars retrograde in Leo. And the Mars retrograde in Leo is also a retrograde that may have to do with pride and ego, and jealousy and competition for who is most special or who is most important. And there are so many interesting shadows of the sign of Leo that could also be a part of how we're looking at the Sun square Neptune right now, because the Sun is the host of Leo. So that makes this, to me, a really good moment to pause and talk about some of the downfalls of ego, a big solar theme. When Mars is retrograde in Leo and the host Sun is squaring Neptune, the potential for downfalls of ego exist. And so what are the things that lead to a downfall of ego, which, if we're honest, will have us like a wounded, embarrassed lion licking our paws, licking our wounds. So most of us want to have a healthy ego. We all have one. It's not a bad thing to have an ego, but what does it mean to have a healthy one? And what are the traps that we know exist? What has this great tradition of yoga, karma yoga, said about the traps of the ego and how to avoid them? And so I thought this would be worth reflecting on today. So these are things that I wrote down in a notebook from a collection of talks. I took notes all the time when I was a student of Bhakti Yoga and sat in on so many different talks. And, I get with the equivalent of like a sermon, I guess, Dharma talks that are rooted in scriptures or a particular verse or chapter or story. And I learned so many things. And so one of the pieces of my notebook that I cherish is all the things that I jotted down that I heard different teachers say about karma and the traps that everyone should know about. So before I get into this, let me just say a few things about karma that I think are sort of universally applicable, because there may be some people who hear that word and don't like it. And I think that's probably, for the most part, that's really fair. Like the people are rubbed the wrong way by that word. It's usually for good reasons. So what I have come to understand about the word karma and why it's a word that I feel comfortable with is that it broadly refers to the fact that we live in this energetic material space where when you act like the butterfly flapping its wings, it has all sorts of ripple effects, and our actions and the intention and the consciousness within the actions create chains of action and reaction. And that, broadly speaking, is a part of the fabric of this constantly fluctuating, changing material world. So really all that karma means is just that there is a world of choice, of action and reaction, and that it is all orchestrated together in intelligent ways that are also highly mysterious, and that our actions and the outcomes that come about through our choices and actions have a way of offering us feedback and reflection. Though many outcomes in our lives are deeply mysterious, we can't see the root causes and it's not ever as simple as saying like, oh, if something bad happens to you, then you should simply reflect on what you did to cause it. That's not actually at all how karma works, as I've had it explained to me by many teachers in the Indian tradition. There is, of course, a very moral sense of the way in which karma works, like actions that are immoral, that are lacking in virtue, care, compassion, sensitivity, etc., will generate feedback for us that will be instructive and corrective. But the way in which destiny and the way in which fate and the intervention of spirits and of the divine in our lives work is not just a system of moral checks and balances, which means that not every event that happens can simply be reflected on as a result of your, how elevated you are morally or how lacking you are morally or something like that. So anyway, there's a way in which karma is deeply mysterious, and like Krishna says, not even the wisest sages can comprehend the workings of karma. And so all karma means to me is just that there is a world in which choices, actions, reactions are all mysteriously woven together, that if we study our choices, our consciousness, our intentions, and we look at what comes from choices that we make, that there is an intelligence built in that can help refine our consciousness, our character, that can help us become wiser, more compassionate beings, etc. And that all experience, all outcomes are divinely arranged. So if you believe something like that, broadly speaking, you probably have no problem with the basic idea of karma. The equivalent version of it in the ancient Western world was really the idea of fortune, the wheel of fortune, which is also something that's very similar in the Taoist perspective, that there's a way in which life is just always changing and fluctuating. Things are full and high, and things are low and empty, and there's always a vacillation of circumstance. And that the sage is one who reflects upon the cycles and reflects upon their actions and the kinds of reactions that come through in this medium. That is part of living a contemplative life, whether you're a Taoist or, an ancient Christian contemplative or anything. Okay, I say all of that again just so that we can kind of have maybe a safer, more comfortable space within which to explore the following ideas about karma in relation to the Sun and Neptune. So I hope that, helps people out a little bit. And remember, you're free to have your own thoughts about all of this stuff. So, but take these, I think these lessons are sort of universally applicable. You will notice that these are things that are taught in many different religious and spiritual traditions. I believe they are sort of perennial human values, but they are also specific rules about not making your karma worse. Which means not creating circumstances for yourself through unconscious kinds of motivations and intentions and activity that will have a feedback effect that is often a little bit painful to get the kind of correction karmically. So, and I do believe that happens as someone who's reflected myself on times, for example, where, like a Sun Neptune thing, when there's been tremendous arrogance, the feedback has often been painful. And humbling. And so there's really good advice about how to avoid some of the traps of the ego. And that's a big Sun Neptune thing. So let's get into it. Number one. So let's say you have a friend and you work with them and they just keep getting into bad relationships, right? And you get so frustrated with them because you're like, man, this sucker just won't learn. We all know someone like that, and we're like that too, right? That's the point. But the advice is, anytime that we find ourselves observing, oh, look, Karen got what she had coming to her, she got into another bad relationship and she's enamored by the wrong kinds of guys or whatever, and you can see it coming from a mile away, and there's a little satisfaction that you take. Maybe some people take a big portion, like a big piece of satisfaction cake on their plate. Probably most of us maybe take a little satisfaction, right? But any measure of satisfaction that we take in the downfall of other people, even if they're really unconscious and ignorant, or even if we find them to be a despicable character for one reason or another, we find their choices to just be like so ignorant, that when we celebrate the downfall of other people, when we go, that's exactly what they got, what's coming to them, that entangles us in their karma. And the fact that I heard a teacher in India say that one time, it immediately made sense to me. I was like, yeah, like maybe you aren't going to be entangled with that person literally. It's not like you become best friends with Janine at work who's dating all the wrong men and then suddenly you date a wrong man. I don't think it doesn't have to be that literal. But there is a way in which at some point you have entangled yourself in the constellation of someone else's karma by celebrating their misfortune or their difficult learning lesson or their difficult experience with a pattern that you can see, but maybe they can't, or whatever. It's easy to be on the side of righteousness when looking at other people and seeing, whoa, that's dark, that's ignorant, that's, but one of the things that comes with the Sun Neptune is this delusional thought that we are above everyone and everything, that we are somehow, that we rise above our own entanglements and our own problems. There can be a delusional way in which we think of ourselves as godlike with Sun Neptune. And I'm not saying that we aren't divine, we certainly are, but to go to that level of hubris with our sense of self is problematic and will entangle us. One of the simplest pieces of advice with the sun Neptune is, and I'm going to go through several virtues that dissolve pride, but this is a point of pride that can come up under major sun. Remember, Mars is retrograde in the sun sign, sun is square Neptune. Celebrating someone else's bad karma or difficult situation, even if you can see very clearly why it's like, oh, they had that coming, that will entangle us. We have to be very careful of that. It's actually self-preservation karmically to create peaceful, better, more conducive, to whatever extent we have any control. And that's a big mystery too, but to whatever extent we do, it certainly doesn't help anything to celebrate the downfall of other people. There can be a way in which we see, people who are criminals, people who have done terrible things being brought to justice, and we can feel gratitude that justice is at work, right? But that larger feeling of gratitude is different than the personal sort of vindictive celebration of someone's misfortune. It's different, Number 2, I told you so means we haven't yet learned. It's very similar, but slightly different. Sometimes we're in relationships with people and, there's a debate about something. There's a debate about what's right, what's wrong, what to do, what not to do. Even something as simple as like, let's debate about some kind of fact, and then we're going to pull out our phones and we're going to use AI. We're going to look it up. We're going to figure out who is right. And I'm right. See, I told you so. There is a warning that I heard one of my teachers say all the time, which is that I told you so means you haven't yet learned the very thing that you think you know. And I mean, that might sound kind of weird in the case of like, I told you so, dishwashers don't run on batteries. They you plug them in. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like there might be some application of this that seems pretty benign and stupid. But my point is that when we're in dynamics with other people and there are debates about who knows more or who knows what or how to do something, and it turns out that we're right and the other person was wrong, that it is incredibly important that within that space, we not take a moment to, we don't take a victory lap. We don't dunk on people. And that might seem like the smallest thing. And there's a way in which obviously, like if you're having fun with someone, I told you so, and that's different, right? I don't think there's any harm in play. But when we have that little jab of like, I was right, you were wrong, I win, you lose, that entangles us. That will make it the way that my spiritual teacher explained it in the Bhakti tradition. And I have always just believed this to be true. It's like certain things I'll take away. I might not be card-carrying member of the Bhakti tradition any longer, but I do believe this is true. If I jab someone with I told you so, I knew it, I was right, there will be a way in which I will have to be put into the opposite position and I will be jabbed for being wrong, right? It's like something that there's something we haven't learned yet about grace, about mercy, about compassion, about humility, that our pride is taking over. And it's a small little thing. It's so easy to want to take a little victory lap or dunk on someone when we're right and someone else is wrong. I stay away from most forms of social media engagement that are heavily text-based because it seems like a lot of these forums, this is just my reflection, a lot of these forums are about putting ideas out there and then trying to fight with people about them. And then there's a lot of like, I was right, you were wrong. And all of that whole realm, for whatever moments we may be right about something in the pissing competition of ideas, in the sword fight of ideas, those victories are very temporary, and the amount of egoic inflation surrounding victory in that context is entangling. And this is something I learned really profoundly while Mars was retrograde in Gemini a few years ago. That was like one of the big takeaways that I had, because I got to this point where I was very frustrated with dealing with people leaving really mean, sometimes very personal and vindictive comments on social media, on YouTube posts and stuff like that. It was just like really like jabbing mean things. So I thought, I'm just going to fight back. But it entangled me in a way that was good to learn. It was good to see. And then I was like, now I really have disinterest. I'm not just holding myself back falsely with some false sense of being above it all. Sometimes we do have to tangle with people to learn how to really detach, that it's really worth it to detach because the entanglement is too much. So you can't learn that without doing it, But it is a lesson we learn again and again, which is that winning and being right and taking a victory lap usually entangles us further. So you have to be really careful about that. Protect our serenity, as we say in Al-Anon. Okay, number 3, lack of humility and reverence comes prior to downfall. Pride comes before a fall. This is something that is a very literal teaching that comes through the scriptures in the Bhakti tradition, the Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavat Purana, the Mahabharata. There's so many instances of this in mythologies from all around the world, that in moments where you let your pride, your ego, your sense of being good or special or better overcome, and sort of step across an invisible line. We all know that there's a line. And there's a way in which being full of yourself is beautiful, right? Being full of yourself is nothing more than being full of your own spirit. So beautiful to be full of ourselves in the sense of light and love and happiness and dharma. I am full with the beautiful divine essence of who I am. And then there's an imaginary, it's like the dimmer switch we've talked about. All of a sudden it gets just so bright that it drowns, that you go across some kind of invisible line. And as soon as we do, we have set in motion a way that the universe will have of giving us a response to help us develop greater awareness of the dimmer switch, being full of yourself, and also making sure there's enough space for others to be full, right? Humility is and reverence. I reverently respect the reality that I'm in. I reverently respect all other beings, these kinds of things. No one's perfect. No one's walking around like perfect bodhisattva, but reverent of every blade of grass. It can go so far. I mean, think about, there's an interesting tradition, the Jains in India, where they would be careful not to walk on a bug. You ever heard of that before? It's fascinating. So, I mean, people can take this pretty far, this whole idea of humility, reverence, sacred consideration for everyone around you, really being careful to be humble as we walk through the earth. However far you want to take it is your business, but if you want to avoid the bugs, cool. I have a fly swatter. I have to admit it. So anyway, but the basic idea with Sun Neptune is that great spaces of inflation egotistically typically precede things like disappointment, failure, humiliation, not humility, but humiliation, and downfall, a crash of the ego. Those are usually painful for us, even if maybe they end up being healing and instructive. But we can avoid having to learn in that way. One of the things that, we have Hilda, she's asleep in the bed over there. You can't see her, but she's a big dog. And when we first had her, she was first coming into our home. She's a rescue dog. She's a Mastiff. And, I thought that I had to be more severe in my tone with commands like sit, stay, no, yes, than I had to be, because she's so big, right? And then what I learned, we worked with a trainer, and I absolutely love this guy that we worked with. His name was Chris. And he was observing me working with her, and he was like, you've got the right amount of firmness, but your tone is too severe. It's too strict. You can be firm, but gentle, So be firm with her. Stern is maybe even the right word, but not intense, not severe, not punitive. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, he made the point. He was like, sometimes when people get really big dogs and not used to having big dogs, you're a little nervous, you're a little scared, you're a little anxious. So you kind of overcompensate by being a little too severe because you're afraid that you have to control something that's unmanageable. Oh my God, you coach humans, not dogs, you know? And I was so thankful. I was like, this is so true. So since then, gradually it's been a process of learning that firm does not mean intense. Now I say that because there's a way in which anything that we do to try to correct ourselves or to bring ourselves to a wiser or more enlightened position, sometimes because we recognize the ego is a little unmanageable, right? So then we get severe or strict or stern with the ego, like it's an unmanageable kind of scary thing to me. That behavior isn't great, so how do I manage it? And what I think is important for all of these points when it comes to the ego is that the ego is not a bad thing. So it needs some guidance from our higher self, but that guidance should be firm but not severe. Because any punitive treatment of the ego typically just creates bad behavior. And that was the point, the dog trainer's point exactly. Is like, if you want a healthy dog that's big like this, your firmness, but your gentleness is how you get the good behavior. And I was like, yeah, because, it wasn't like I was being mean, but it was just like too much intensity. So I was like, okay, this makes sense to me. Then I have to look inside and go, well, I realize that it's my fear, that it's my worries, whatever. It's my anxiety that I'm projecting. And I think the same kind of thing happens when it comes to trying to manage our ego, when we notice and realize that it sometimes gets out of hand, that we overcorrect, we overcompensate because we know a behavior isn't good. We call it bad. But actually, this kind of positive reinforcement, encouragement, firmness, but not severe, is how we gently guide our ego back to, the right place. So that dimmer switch kind of analogy, that we have the right amount of self, that we're full of ourselves to the right amount. Okay, let's go on. Number 4, being seduced by power is actually disempowering. So one of the things that I've said this before, and by the way, I also feel I want to just disclaimer, I feel very open to a constructive use of this word. And just because I have some concerns with this word doesn't mean that I don't support people's right to use it and feel good about it. But I sometimes have issues when people talk about the point of spiritual growth and something like the word sovereignty. The issue I have with that word is just, its etymological history has a lot to do with power and dominion, and power in association with things like land, or, it's a word that is like pretty tied into things like colonization and things like power over people and power over land. And so the measure of our worth being equated to how much power we have with a word where that word sovereign is usually about how much power we have relative to other people. So when people say, I want to be my own sovereign, I kind of functionally understand the idea, right? It's like, I want to have my own agency. I want to have my own dignity. Okay, so fine. That on that level, like, I get it. But I think there are some times in the sort of, broadly speaking, sort of the new age culture, there can be uses of that word that are problematic. And when we think of the purpose of our lives and what is going to make us feel happy or good, all of the spiritual traditions that I've ever studied do not emphasize a great augmentation of power, personal power, as the path to happiness, or as the path to contentment or peace. It's not that some sense of agency, some self-belief, some confidence, some ability to act and choose, some affirming of our dignity isn't important. So on that level, I don't quibble with the word, but it gets into this space where we have to be really careful, because one of the things that, again, I learned from some of the teachers in the Bhakti tradition that I really appreciated was that when you think about what will enhance your self-worth, your happiness, your contentment, be careful to think that it has anything to do with power. Just kind of be careful, because bizarrely, the more that we get interested in the augmentation of our power, the more disempowered we become, because power is seductive, and power is something that can actually possess us more than it's something we possess. You'll find similar passages in the I Ching that talk about any real contact with power is the power of reality itself, the Tao, right? So people who are effective channelers of power understand that they are doing just that they are being a conduit, and that there's a very humble, quiet acknowledgement within, almost like a secret place within, where you go, none of this is me, none of this belongs to me. And people around you don't look at you, they don't know you as someone who claims to be in ownership or possession of power, right? And that doesn't mean that you are not experienced as a powerful or effective person. But being seduced by your power, by how much power you have, by how victorious you are relative to other people, is in the end something that tends to disempower us. That's interesting. That's really fascinating. Something I find that I have to be really careful of, the temptation to compare myself to, other people, other astrologers, other dads, or people I meet, whatever. Number 5, being good isn't about getting things. Now, this one is like, anyone who's a parent knows this very well, right? Your kids are like, there's a way in which we teach through rewards. Like, yeah, if you have good behavior, you get something good. And there's a place for that. And there's certainly a way in which the karmic reality that we live in seems to sometimes reward good behavior. I don't have any problems with any of that. There's also this teaching that we all know, it's as basic as parenting 101, which is that being good is its own reward. That we need to develop a taste for virtue without any attachment to what it brings us. I think one of the reasons that, one of the reasons right now that I think we see there's a concern always for human beings that we act virtuously. And then there's also a way in which we don't like it if someone seems to take pride in acting virtuously. And then there's this funny karmic loop where you go, that person is taking pride in acting virtuously, and you go, well, they'll get what's coming to them, and now you're entangled. Right? It's all of these things end up relating to one another. You go, gosh, I don't like that person. Look at them. They're acting so self-righteous, like they've got the moral compass of the universe going on. What an annoying self-righteous person. They'll just have to learn the hard way. And then before we know it, there we are, entangled. So it's interesting because there's a way in which we all have to learn this very gradual lesson over and over that, being in the humble, sincere, curious, compassionate, forgiving, patient place feels good. And that, it's sort of, in my experience, these virtues that I just mentioned, passion, compassion, patience, etc., it's sort of like sobriety, in that initially there's a way in which sobriety feels like I'm doing the right thing. I'm doing the thing I ought to be doing. And then over time, as you deepen into sobriety, and this is speaking as someone who dealt with addiction in my early 20s, that moving from sobriety as the right thing to do into something that feels good, into something that is a feel-good space to be in. The same thing happens when it comes to cultivating virtue. And so when we cultivate virtue, at first it's like, this is the thing I ought to be doing. And then it can be very easy to stay in that realm. And then once we're in that realm, we start measuring our goodness and other people's goodness, or that person's self-righteous and they're going to get what's coming. And as long as we stay in the realm of oughts and shoulds, even if they're good oughts and shoulds, we're not quite in the space we need to be in yet, right? There's another step. All these traditions talk about the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law, for example, in the New Testament. So what does it look like to actually feel good while doing the right things? And you know that self-righteousness, hypocrisy, criticism, judgment, severity, the ego, you'll know it when it starts coming in because you'll feel it starting to steal your peace, steal your joy, steal your forgiveness, your patience. And you know it because you feel it. Something, a presence, a thought, an attitude is starting to come in and take me out of the good feeling that comes with the good things. And it's the feeling that eventually allows us to attune ourselves to that space. And that's a Sun-Neptune thing as well. Staying in a felt presence of the light, of divinity, of sacredness, of love, of compassion, of forgiveness as a permeating reality that we can live in and move in just like fish swimming in water. That is something it's a felt presence that we have to move into. We don't abandon our ego either, but we are very careful of the ways that the ego can come in and take us out of that flow. So the virtues that dissolve this pride we've mentioned, humility and curiosity. We can cultivate this as a Sun-Neptune dynamic that we find the universe to be magical, beautiful, without need for any explanation or certainty, mysterious, beautiful, and yet we're filled with a kind of confidence and faithfulness. It allows us to stay humble and curious. It's so beautiful that we can stay humble and curious. Forgiveness. I forgive myself when I mess up. I forgive other people. That is an inclination or an impulse that comes up prior to condemnation, judgment, pride, ego, power. Compassion. That when other people are suffering, that we feel compassion for them rather than judgment, annoyance. I told you so. I know more than you do. Look at what's coming for you. Reverence. That we look at everything happening in the world as sacred and that we see it as arranged by the gods, arranged by divinity. And so we stay reverent of what's happening. And we know that judgment, ego, pride, vanity takes us out of reverence, and we can feel it when it's happening. Acceptance. Acceptance is a simple one, that there's just a simple way in which the things that come up, that come through within us, within others, that we accept, that we say, okay, that is what occurred. We just an ability to roll with things that really is part of forgiveness, passion, compassion, reverence, etc. So some thoughts today. I think probably what we'll do, we're going to for sure be spending some time with the Venus-Jupiter trine this week, but I thought it would be good to explore some nuances and some spiritual insights behind Sun-Neptune, especially since Sun is ruling that Mars retrograde right now. All right, we'll leave it there. After I sign off, you're going to hear me talk about the rewards that you can get when you support the channel. We have need for still over about 1,500 backers, as far as I knew at the time I was recording this, to go. So we still need a lot of help. If you can find the link to the Kickstarter in the comment section, in the description of the video on the website, nightlightastrology.com. Every donation really helps. Any and all amounts help us meet our goal. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around. I'm going to tell you about the different rewards that we offer when you donate and support our channel in the year ahead. So you'll find a link to the Kickstarter in the description of this video, in the comments section of this video, as well as on our website, nightlightastrology.com. If you head over there, you'll see at the top of the page there is a menu item that says Kickstarter 2025. You can click on that and be taken over to the Kickstarter campaign page. So once you're there, if you scroll down on the right-hand side, you're going to see different pledge levels and different gifts and sales that we run as a way of saying thank you for your support. So among those, our most popular offering by far are the major discounts that we offer on our training programs. So if you are interested in studying astrology at Nightlight in 2025, whether you're a brand new student or a currently enrolled student who's thinking of taking one of our year 2, 3 horary programs, you're going to find that these are the best rates that we run on the entire year. And we do this as a way of both saying thank you and also of helping us raise funds to support the channel, our staff, and everything we do. So you'll see attend one Nightlight course there. That's about 50% off the total cost of the program and about $500 off the early bird rate. And then you'll scroll down and you'll see that if you bundle 2 courses together, the savings go way up. Bundle 3, they go up even more. I mean, the difference between the 2 and 3 class package is $200. So $200 more, you get 3 of our year-long programs. And if you get all the way to the 4 class pass, then you have all 4 years of our program. You can take them at any pace you like, renew them whenever you like. There's no timeline on when you use these class passes. And you will have all 4 years of content at about 75% off each of the programs individually when you get that bundle. So those are our best savings for sure. Highly recommend those. If you have any questions about our courses or programs, email us info@nightlightastrology.com or look at the website under the classes page, courses page. You'll find information about each of the individual courses we offer. And then if you scroll up, you're going to find some of our other programs that are greatly discounted. Ashley's Herbal Foundations apprenticeship course, which many people are interested in who come through our Moon Circle that Ashley and I lead each month. You scroll up, you're going to find our Masterclass series for 2025, greatly discounted, as well as our Roots and Spheres Moon Circle, greatly discounted. There's hundreds of dollars of savings in each of those. So we really try to make sure that the Kickstarter acts as a good flash sale for all of our programs. You'll then find some really nice prices on previous archive talks, like our 2024 archive masterclass bundle, which is about 30 hours worth of content on specialized topics in astrology. You can see the topics listed in each of the bundles as you scroll through. 2023's masterclass bundle, huge savings on those and a lot of really great content. You'll see a few reading options as you continue to go from the bottom to the top. You'll see the 2025 year ahead mini reading. There's only 30 of these. These are individualized birth chart readings that I do looking at the most significant transit in your birth chart for 2025. I record those personally. You'll then see that there is an Ask 3 Horary Questions option where you can get 3 horary questions to redeem whenever you'd like within the year ahead. Those are kind of yes, no predictive questions. Will I get the job? Will we get together? Things like that. Then you'll see the Astrology for Complete Beginners course is also discounted through the Kickstarter. This is a great 10 hours worth of content for people who are brand new to astrology. So whether that's you or maybe a gift for somebody else. And then you're going to see some individual master classes that are greatly discounted from the past year. So all of 2024's masterclass series are the archives of which 8 to 10 hours each are on sale. And then scroll up a little bit more and you'll see one of our most popular offerings, which are the year ahead horoscope readings. These year ahead horoscope readings include 30 to 45 minutes of a breakdown of all the major transits of the year ahead for each sun and rising signs. You get all of them with this package, which is a great deal. It's like 10 hours worth of content, 8, 9, 10 hours, somewhere in there. I haven't finished recording all of them yet. So as of the time I'm recording this, I'm anticipating it'll land around 10 hours. But yeah, anyway, so you scroll up, you'll see those horoscope videos will all be delivered to you right around January 1st when the Kickstarter ends. Scroll up a little bit more, you'll find The Oracle Speaks, which is my book, and this is being released chapter by chapter. It is a book about the inner experience of learning to speak with oracles, and it is being released chapter by chapter in both text and audiobook form, so you can listen along to my new book. And that takes us up to the Astrology of 2025 video. This, for your donation at the $50 level, gives you an exclusive talk breaking down all of the major astrological transits of 2025. I look in depth at some of the biggest things happening in the year ahead and break them down in advance. And that's the only place I release that video or that take on the whole year ahead. Finally, at the very top, the most basic level of donation, you'll see the Astrology of 2025 calendar. This is a PDF calendar we design and make that allows you to track and move along with the astrology as the year unfolds. This is also great if you want to track what we're going to be talking about week by week on my channel. You'll get a glimpse at the biggest transits of each day and month and week. And that will give you some sense of where we're heading with our coverage of the astrology on the channel as the year unfolds. So again, any questions about any of the rewards that you see, email us info@nightlightastrology. Link is in the description, comments, or on the website, nightlightastrology.com. Help us get to 1,937 backers by January 1st. We deeply appreciate your contribution. We try to make sure we have some really special rewards to say thank you when you contribute. All right, take it easy. Bye.